want some more sparkle on my friggin' lips.
I thought you said your freedom lips. It's the 4th of July. Why are your lips freedom lips? I need more sparkle on the freedom lips.
We don't French kiss anymore. We freedom kiss. Hi,
yes,
Kate.
Freedom kiss. And it's got to involve glitter.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
I hope Frank includes our conversation about my lips as the opening of this episode.
I sure
because nothing will explain better what's been going on with our shit this week.
Freedom lips.
They can take away my freedom, but they can't take my lips.
They might.
So, okay. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Becca. It feels like it's been a long time.
Yeah, we did not have our shit together last week. These past 2 weeks, I would say 14 days of not having our shit together at all, at least on my end.
Like really debatable shit togetherliness. Like, not a lot.
I was sick for a couple days. I was on vacation. I didn't have a voice. We crammed in a recording with Jonathan last minute on Monday just to get something out on Monday. Thank God it was good, but you weren't able to be there because it was a last minute like emergency recording and you have a life. And yeah, so I think this week, no, I think this week we're just gonna like, I don't know, we're just gonna have fun this week, right? No guests, just have fun. Yeah, we just need a break. We just need a break to talk about something fun. And maybe hopefully by next week, we'll have our shit together again. And
but if we don't, we can always shoot the shit again.
We could. It's our podcast. We can do whatever the fuck we want.
It is our fucking podcast.
Let's at least talk about, did you have your shit together last week, Kate?
Did I have my shit together last week or this week? Let me think. There were 2 really important things I needed to do that I haven't done really in 2 weeks. Like I made like not even a half-assed effort, like a quarter-ass effort on like one of the things. And the other thing I was like, man, I'll get it done eventually. They're kind of important. Like they're kind of really important. Like one of them is that like somehow we lost our food stamps and I really need them back because I haven't been able to work and food costs a lot of money and it's really expensive right now.
It costs more than ever.
It really does.
I got like 5 things from the grocery store yesterday and it was like $120. Every time I go to
the grocery store, it's like $100 to $200 and I'm like, wow, I thought I was getting 5 things, you know, and like not being frivolous, I'm getting food we need, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I've been to your house. You eat like rice and fish and kale for dinner. You're not eating like caviar and I don't know, souffle.
I mean, salmon is the favorite fish, but we don't eat it all the time.
Yeah, but you got like the frozen generic from Walmart salmon. It's not like you were getting it fresh from the farmer's market. I'm sorry if you don't want me to put your shit out there. We can edit that. But I just want to be very clear. You are not wasting the taxpayers' money. You're just buying like the most nutritious food you can get for your boys at the lowest cost.
I'm trying, girl. I'm trying, but I haven't had food stamps since April, and that's been a huge drain. And then I haven't been able to work for the past 4 weeks, almost. So, not massage anyway. I've been doing witchcraft, but I haven't done any massage for money or at all. No, seriously, though, I haven't. But yeah, so like that was one really important thing. The other really important thing was that I really need to fill out all of the stacks of financial assistance paperwork for the hospital because they need like all sorts of verification proving that I am a lower class citizen right now. Oh
yeah, because wow.
Because the hysterectomy,
they gave you such awesome care there. They gave you such like first class care.
Yeah.
God, it was like,
thank you, ma'am.
It was
Thanks
like
for the uterus. Out you go.
Drive-through surgery. It was like I mean, I get they have staffing shortages and they were just as screwed as you were, but you didn't get first class service. You shouldn't have to pay first class prices. That was some bargain basement service you got that day.
Coat hanger action.
They were like, the surgery center was like, oh, we don't want her. And the outpatient center was like, oh, we don't want her. And then you got sent back to the surgery center. And then you got sent back to the outpatient center. And then they were like, oh, well, you can recover in the surgery center overnight. And then they're like, oh, no, you have to go home right now because we're all getting off work. Bye.
Yeah,
went home with this like drugged up Kate who like couldn't even remember anything, couldn't walk. I had to like carry you into your house.
how did you get me into my house? Because I don't remember at all.
Well, I drove through the yard to the front door.
Which I really wish I remembered because that would have been really cool.
I sort of put your arm around my shoulders and my arm around your waist and got you to the couch.
Really?
Yeah, so you wouldn't fall. I mean, like you were on your feet, but you were kind of like, when I say you were tipsy, I don't mean like people who were drunk. I mean, you were literally like lilting from side to side, like you could go over at any moment.
I was so drugged out of my gourd. Like, and thank God. But that's so weird to me because I remember tiny little snippets of things. Like I remember opening my eyes in the recovery room or whatever that was for a moment and then closing them and seeing like this weird spotlight in a dark room centered on surgical tools that little ants were crawling all over. And then I opened my eyes again and I was like, oh, I guess that was a dream or something. Anyway, and like the next thing I remember is like trying to get my underpants on and that being some kind of crazy circus and I was being assisted. And like, I don't remember anything else. I don't remember getting the rest of my clothes on. I don't remember getting in a wheelchair. I don't remember getting from that room through the hospital to the outside of the hospital to the car. I don't remember getting in the car. I do remember a couple of moments in your car because it was sunny. And I remember asking you something and being confused about it. And I don't remember, that's it. The next thing I remember is I'm sitting on the couch and going, oh, I'm home now. Huh.
You probably are remembering when you asked me how the surgery went. And I told
for the fifth time.
Yeah, and I laughed, and you said what? And I said, well, I could tell you, but I've already told you 4 times. But if you want me to tell you again, I will. But you probably won't remember.
I remember that very specific moment. None of the other times, but I remember that specific moment because for some reason it was really like it freaked me out for some reason.
I just don't think you're supposed to go home from the hospital when you're still that much under anesthesia. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it was after that I read that anesthesia, one of the main points of it is that it creates memory loss so that you won't remember the trauma of the operation. That's the main point of anesthesia, is that it kills your memory.
So I could have been suffering horribly, but I don't remember.
Right.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm okay with that.
No need to uncover traumatic Fairies memories. Yeah,
I don't need to remember that shit because like there's this when I broke my leg the second time, I broke it a lot. like I was I'm sure I've told you the story before, probably on the podcast, but like there's the moment when I'm trying to get back down the 20-foot wall that I heard my leg snap. And then I don't remember from that point till the point that I landed on my butt on the ground. So I know in theory that I probably dropped about 10 feet, landed on my feet, broke my leg to smithereens, and then toppled over. But I don't remember that part. I just remember hearing my leg snap and going, shit, I probably broke it again. And then landing on my butt going, oh, wow, that's a lot of pain. And like looking down and going, my leg is going the wrong direction. I'm going to just lay back on the ground now.
Oh, man.
I don't remember that at all. And there are like that little chunk of time, don't remember it. And like a bunch of the chunks of time, like, cause they wrapped my leg in like a thing. And then 3 enormous dudes picked me up and put me in the back of a golf cart and took me to a tent over this huge warrior dash. Like it probably didn't take that long either. It probably took 10 minutes, but as far as I can tell, it took about 4 hours. But like, I don't remember most of the golf cart ride. I remember moments where I'm like clinging to the back of the golf cart going, like this, but like, and like bracing myself so hard that I like cramped a shoulder or something. But I don't remember getting from the golf cart into the tent or getting an IV or any. I don't remember any of that.
Your body has really been through it, Kate. You've had a lot of operations.
2 on my leg and
Uh-huh.
1 to remove my uterus.
Well, I mean,
Well,
a lot. I've had 3, but they
3
were
on
just
my
on
leg.
my eyes. I just had, left eye in kindergarten, right eye in first grade, and then right eye again in like my late 20s. And I need it
remember
again.
those.
And I don't want to have it again.
I really don't like, I really, really hate anesthesia. I really, really don't. I mean, who does enjoy
I
having?
thought that was the
But-
worst part of my eye surgeries was the going under. The worst part of my eye surgeries, trigger warning for our millennial listeners and viewers who don't like eye trauma. You want to tune back in about 20
Becca!
seconds.
You're being such a cunt.
Sorry. No, I know that's the thing. People don't like body trauma and like, or body whatever. But literally when they do it as an adult, they wake you up in the middle with the strings hanging out of your eyes to make sure you don't have double vision. They roll you into the recovery room. They let you wake up. They do the thing like look over here, look over here. You get double vision when you look a certain way. They know how to like finish off the surgery. They wheel you back in the operating room. They stick the clockwork orange things in your eyeballs and they finish the surgery while you're awake. And it doesn't hurt, but you're watching a needle go in and out of your eye. And you're trying not to bat the doctor away with your hands. And that's why I think I'm just going to let my right eye cross for the rest of my life and never have that operation again.
I don't know that I would be able to not bap at the doctor.
Well, I felt like I was going to pass out and I felt very warm and I just went to lift a hand out of the blankets and they thought I was going to bap the doctor and nurses descended on me like policemen on a black man.
Rebecca! Hello.
You're right. It wasn't as bad as policeman on a black man.
As long as you're a Caucasian woman, it will never be as bad as policeman on a black man.
But they freaked the fuck out. They really did.
I bet they did. One time I was at a chiropractor and he snapped my neck without warning me first. And I like immediately just slapped him across the face. Not hard, but hard enough.
Well, this has become a very traumatic and disgusting podcast. Apologies to the viewers and listeners that thought they would hear some like self-help advice this week. And instead they're just getting gory surgery details.
Let's talk about a different kind of trauma.
What is it we wanted to talk about this week, Kate?
Well, first I brought up the idea. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of fairy tales and myths and legends, right? Huge, huge, and
gigantic,
gigantic, yes,
enormous,
gigundous, even
mega,
supercalifragilisticexpialidocious,
extraordinary.
Corpulent, maybe.
Okay. Oh, okay. An obese fan.
Engorged. Engorged.
I have no more synonyms. I mean synonyms.
Should we delete
our sound?
Turgid's
homonyms. Is it synonyms or homonyms that we're doing?
Cinnamon
rolls.
It's turmeric. Yes, it's turmeric.
Okay. I swear to God.
Okay.
I'm not under the influence of anything, but go ahead. Tell me about how much you love fairy tales, and I'm going to shut up for a second.
Becca, next time we hang out, we both need to be stoned on purpose because if this is what we're like sober. Anyways. Okay, anyway. So, yeah, I love fairy tales. I love them a lot, but there is something I researched or heard on a podcast about a year ago about the myths and legends about the American indigenous stoneworkings, especially the stoneworkings that are in the northeastern states. because when European immigrants started arriving, the colonists started arriving, you know, of course they wanted to like tear all the trees down and build their houses because that's what we know how to do in Europe, you know, and so they're, you know, shoving indigenous peoples off their land, as they
Because
do.
they don't know how to paint with all the colors of the wind.
They don't, you know, they don't know how to howl at the blue corn moon and stuff. And so, or they, maybe some of them did, I don't know. Anyways, so when they were building, they were like, oh, look at all these stone walls that are already here. Cool. We'll just take these stones and use them to build our own walls and or houses and stuff, right? But the stone walls that were built by the indigenous peoples were not built like to keep things out or in of different areas of land necessarily. But from what
for then?
Right, well, like from what I read, which is a bare minimum, okay? What I read is that the theory is that the stone walls, when they studied them, they saw them lining up like east-west and like lining up on very high points. So it didn't look like any obvious, this is my land and this is your land. It wasn't like that. It was like a serpent. And the more they studied it, the more they saw that they were very purposefully carved, and there were like pictures made with the stones, like of people and serpents and things in these long walls of stones. And they would often lead to and or from mounds, and the mounds, they didn't know what the mounds were, and they were made of stone and then covered in earth. And there were local stories, and the only tribe I can remember the name of connected to these stones were the Micmac, who were like Canadian Northern States tribe. The Micmac peoples had these stories about how there were tribes of little people living in or around the mounds, and so they would leave them offerings and things, which sounds exactly like the little people stories in Europe. Now,
do you think that this was like they were marking, have you ever heard of thin places?
Thin places? Explain.
It's one of those like woo-woo, like I don't know, there are some people who believe there are places on earth where like the curtain between
yeah
like either dimensions or this side and the other side are thinner than other places, and like realities can bleed through and unexplained phenomenon happen. And
yeah, I hadn't heard the term, like, what'd you call it, thin places? Thin. I hadn't heard that term before, but I've heard like people like ley lines or like energy points or whatever.
No, this is different.
Yeah, it's different.
It's just like a little, it's just like a little rip in the fabric of whatever.
Yeah. I
credit to, and that's why we drink. This is where I heard of it.
Oh, cool.
And then I looked it up, and yeah, there's even a trip. You can take a tour of Ireland to all of their thin places. There's like a thin places vacation you can take.
Oh God, why would you do that to yourself? Okay. Sure.
You don't want to see fairies?
Yes and no. How many fairy tales have you read, Beck? Like, you don't want to mess with fairies. Like, if you don't think they're real, cool, then have a great time. But like, if you think they might possibly be real or connected in any way to something that can affect you, maybe don't go play with that shit. Kind of like,
you raised me to think that fairies were fun and wonderful and we should seek them out.
Because I hadn't read the old fairy tales yet. I only read the Americanized ones at that point. I've read so many more fairy tales now. Don't fuck with fairies. Do you know why they're called fairies?
Why are they called fairies?
They're called fairies because people were calling them, that's short for the fair folk. And they were calling them the fair folk, not because they're pretty necessarily, no offense, but because because they wanted to call them names that would encourage pleasant behavior. Like they called them the good neighbors and the fair people and the lovely people or the hidden people. And this is like not just British or Irish or Scottish, but this is like European other folk were often called pleasant names because they just assumed that these otherworldly creatures could overhear them as they're walking through the woods. And they're like, gee, I hope the good neighbors are kindly today and don't kidnap me somewhere for 50 years.
So they were simultaneously manifesting and kissing up.
Yes, lots of kissing up. Because in every single fairy tale I've read that goes back further than Walt Disney or Grimm, like fairies are shit to deal with. Just don't.
I got this.
It's like Ouija boards. Don't play with Ouija boards, people. Don't do that, please.
Ever? I know. I was joking. It was a joke.
People play. I haven't had to do this yet. But I swear to God, if somebody uses a Ouija board and then I have to go to their house and clean that shit up. Anyway, already had to clean up. Well, it wasn't their fault, but yeah. I've twice had to tell dead people that they're dead, and it's not fun. I'm so sorry that you're dead. Time to move on. Sorry. Surprise. Yeah. At least one time it was kind of a happy surprise. Like, oh, okay, great. I was successful. Yay. Poor guy. Anyways, enough about now we're going back to drama again. But yeah, fairies. Fairy tales are dramatic. Anyway, I thought it would be fun to talk about. We might
need to sage our podcast.
Maybe we should sage our podcast. I was burning incense, like that's my altar back there. So I was like burning incense and shit. And I'm like, but that's just for ambiance for me. But maybe we should sage our podcast.
But anyway, moving on, as you were saying.
So anyway, these ancient stone structures, and like the ones that I'm talking about, like the walls and stuff that are in the north, walls and mounds, as far as I know, that's all that people have found in the northeastern United States and Canada. However, there are much bigger workings, and I know that, sorry, backtracking. So another theory, or maybe it was something handed down by local tribes about some of these stone structures, was that they were telling a story. They were also marking astrological events, and I think there were other theories about cultural reasons why these things were built. And then also there were like fairy stories or spiritual stories, and there were holes in the walls at very specific points, which were meant to be like entryways for spirits to enter into sacred ceremonies and stuff like that. And that concludes all the information I know about that stuff. However, However, there are larger structures and just like vast, amazing structures farther south, like in the Central and South Americas, and that's where Frank should be walking in to tell us about his experience with that. But I don't know if he's listening. Frank?
Yes, and while Frank is joining us, I just want to assure our listeners and viewers, if we have any, that if we ever make any money off of this particular episode or the podcast in general, we will donate money to the Indigenous people on whom we are profiting off of as we talk about their stone structures. And we acknowledge the fact that sometimes ancient alien theory can be a little bit racist, in that it is a bunch of white people hypothesizing that people with brown skin didn't have the technology to do anything until white people came along and taught them. So we are aware of that. And also, aliens are really fun to talk about. Over to you, Frank.
Hey, thanks. Yeah,
I'll get back to that.
No, you're right. That is important. That it's assumed that because it wasn't, us that built this thing, that it was other people a long time ago, that they didn't have the abilities, right?
Right, exactly. There could have been civilizations that were highly advanced before the white man came along. It probably is true.
Right.
There are plenty of civilizations of brown people that were way more advanced than white people have ever been. Just FYI.
Ancient aliens is racist. Hashtag ancient aliens is racist.
But it is a fun theory sometimes.
Yeah. I often just well, I have an entire novel I'm trying to write based off of the fact that probably, yeah, I won't spoil it here, but it does include Martians.
Ah, yes.
32,000 space modulator.
Look for spin-off podcast coming this September with Frank and Beck.
There you go.
Hi Frank, how you doing
Don't
this week?
forget, I'm giving you names.
Ah, yes, you're giving us names.
Yes. What are the latest names?
Well, I don't think we've asked her to name anything yet, but I like the name September Pod, which was the subject of the email I sent you. So we've got one name, Kate.
There you go.
Someone
Okay.
in this story is going to be named September Pod.
I think that's a great name. I'm not sure about the pod part, but I'm sure you'll explain it. But
Well,
No,
I
if
just-
you
no
explain to me,
explanations are an earthly situation, not on Mars. No explanation.
oh, okay.
Just
well,
like
my last name is Waters. Would you explain that? Why is that a normal name? Or John's son?
Yeah.
Maybe
there are
ancient.
reasons why
maybe if
everybody
you-
has those names.
Maybe if you go back in September's lineage far enough, you find out that her great grandmother was a podcaster, and their last name became Pod.
yes,
Sure. What?
the early civilizations of Mars were in pods. They lived in pods together.
That's
yes.
kind of what I was thinking, but podcast would work too. Sure.
Yeah, Mars was colonized by podcasters. Definitely.
Hey, what does mellow mean? Do you know?
It's another. It's not an English word, so it's hard to figure out. But it was originally Dimello. They anglicized it.
Of the
yeah.
Yeah.
So of
whatever mellow is.
yeah,
Probably Miller.
another
Yeah.
trade.
My last name growing up was Swartz, and so which means power in German.
Does it really?
It's a lie. It means black, but same thing, right? So thank you.
Yeah. Black
but like-
power.
Huh?
Black power.
Black
you go.
power, exactly.
That's
So
what
like,
it's called.
my Caucasian self. But the thing is that we don't know if it was like if my great granddad or great granddad, my great granddad, we don't know if he was like from the Schwarzwald or was he a blacksmith, was he a chimney sweep? I don't know. It could be like profession related, but it might be he was from the Schwarzwald. I don't know. And like my nanny, her last name was Della Valley, which means of the valley.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
The end. And her mom's side were the Camaradas, which is Sicilian, and we don't know what that means. They probably don't want us to because they weren't talking.
Your ethnicity is Sicilian, German.
So my dad, European, dude, just European. So my dad's side, my dad's family, they're German immigrants and Irish, Scottish immigrants. And my dad's mom's side is Italian Sicilian. Like came over, gave birth to my grandmother. That recent, right? And then my mom's side, her dad is first generation Polish. Actually, I think his mom was born in Baltimore, but like in Little Poland area of Baltimore. So she didn't even speak English till she was like 12. But like her parents were the Karowskis and the Chorinceviches. So they're like straight from Poland. And then my mom's side, they're like Virginia, Appalachia, way back. Like just Appalachian hillbillies. Just keep going.
All right.
Yeah.
So, but before that, maybe Irish or something if they're Appalachian.
Yeah, Irish.
Okay. So, but what?
And there's legends of a Native American, like an indigenous granddad. A name like his sister's name was Native American, but we don't have any genetic proof of that. But at the same time, like I know where my grandparents came from, and when I did 23andMe, no Sicilian showed up. Like I know I'm part Sicilian, but like nothing in my genetics. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess genetics don't know everything.
Through Sicily, maybe there was a living in Sicily, but not much breeding in Sicily. Like people.
Well, but my dad has Sicilian. So
Okay.
how's that work?
Your sister from another mister or something. So, but what cultures
Mom.
of those ethnicities were there, like actually around when you were growing up? And does any of that relate to your interest in these topics like fairies and the supernatural and that kind of stuff?
Excellent question. Yeah, actually. Yeah, it does. I love it that you asked that
Well,
question.
because I'm curious, when I find somebody that's into something like the way you're into this, I wonder, like where that comes from.
I mean, part of it came from thinking I was
Being
seeing
told.
fairies when I was little with Beck, and maybe I did. I don't know, but like, so part of it was that. Part of it was though knowing all like these different stories from my immigrant great grandparents and my immigrant grandparents. Like my pop, my dad's dad, he grew up as an only child, and he had his Irish auntie growing up with him, immigrant auntie, and his German grandpa, like in the home with him. And his immigrant auntie from, she was Irish, but grew up, yeah, she was Irish. And there was this one time that like she yelled for him and said, "Are there marbles under my feet?" And he said, "No." And she's like, when there are marbles on the stairs, someone will die. I don't know what that meant, but she did have stories about like banshees around the well when she grew up, and oh no, fairies around the well and banshees around the house at night one time, and then the neighbor died. And I found all these really interesting, and I may also have been kind of obsessed with the movie Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
I don't know that one.
It's old. I think it was made in like late 50s, early 60s, and Sean Connery's in it, like young Sean Connery, obviously. And it's the first movie I remember watching. I probably saw it when I was 5 or 6. It's the first movie I remember watching and going, oh, there are other countries and they talk differently there and different things happen there. And like ever since that movie, I'm like, that's where the magical beings are. Ireland. I've got to go to Ireland, because obviously with a name like that, it all takes place in Ireland. And I think that was one of the big things for me, certainly.
Okay.
But then because I have all of this ancestry in different European countries, I wanted to see how fairy tales from different areas of the world compare to each other.
Right.
And most of what I had access to as a kid was just European fairy tales. And that made me really hungry to know what fairy tales were like in not Europe. So once I got a little older, I started researching like Japanese fairy tales and Indian from India fairy tales and African fairy tales and Aboriginal myths and legends. And like, I'm just a nerd for it.
Okay, no, that's cool. I'm wondering
Thank you.
what the issue is with the Portuguese people, because we could just throw it off real easily right back by saying like, oh, it was Christianity when we were kids. Everything was bad if it wasn't out of the Bible. So like we weren't allowed to watch Scooby Doo. We couldn't, even much less study like fairies.
Right. Well, I remember being told that if your nose itches, someone's thinking about you.
I know that one.
And if you see ladybugs, you're going to have company, ladybugs in your house. And I also remember Vavoa telling me that her father's grave had a seagull on it because he wanted to be reincarnated into a seagull. And I know that's not fairy tales, but when mom found out that I heard that, she got so mad. She got in I think, I don't know if she just like was mad to me or if she actually went back and was mad to Vavoa and was like, don't talk to her about reincarnation. We don't believe in that. I don't remember, but yeah, I don't know. But I have determined that the surname Mello probably either came from an Italian surname that was longer that meant of someone, which was like, John's son, basically an Italian version of that, or it means like something to do with blackbirds.
Why does it have to be Italian? That's almost like the annoying thing that everybody says when they hear like, "Oh, your name's Mel, you must be Italian." It's like, no, there's a lot of people in that area.
Well, it says that it probably came from Italy when trade was like probably like an Italian guy married a Portuguese woman
I don't
and
believe
then set up shop in Portugal, and everybody in Portugal got the last name of Mello, but it was probably from,
Why wasn't it a Portuguese guy that moved to Italy and married an Italian woman there, and that's how they got the name?
well, because they think it came from the Italian name guacamole,
Guacamole.
not guacamole. Gaacomello. I don't know, something with a G.
I don't
Mellow.
buy it.
Yeah.
It sounds racist. Like something had to have originated in Italy because we know more about them and we have more of their history, and they're just more
The Italians.
than those silly Portuguese people off the side.
Hey.
Just kind of get the leftovers from the great Italian civilization. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, and then if you want to really travel far back, that means it came from Greece, right? Because everything in Italy is actually from Greece.
Right, the Romans stole it from Greece, and they all just stole it from the Egyptians, and they all stole it from the Aryans. So the name Mello really means like from the city of Babylon, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Guys,
it means
Babylon, dear
pyramid
friends.
builder.
there's this. I'm sure you've heard of Basque Country before, but like, have you?
No,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
Basque pro shops.
No, Basque, like BASQUE.
Oh, like bask in the glory of my beauty.
Yes.
No, that's
like,
BASK.
up in the mountains of Spain, like the mountains between Spain and France, there's Basque Country, and they're officially part of Spain, but no. And they had their own language, and they were really isolated. They had their language is not like any other language on the planet at all. And like a lot of their places are still named after their gods and goddesses that pre-existed before Christianity finally climbed up into the mountains and was like, hey, you should speak Spanish and be Christian. And they're like, and there I got to meet I and am a friend with a person that I met, weirdly enough, on a Mormon mission. And she's the only person I've ever met from Spain. And she's like, yeah, but my people are from Basque Country. And so like her last name and her first name are both different than any Spanish, even from Spain, that I had heard. And I just thought, what a cool idea that there's this secluded country in Europe that isn't anything like Europe. And it had like Latin-based bullshit. No Romans got there ever. Like, they're like, those mountains are too high. Fuck that shit. And like, just this isolated little pocket of a language that's been touched by nothing and no one, and this culture that's been touched by nothing. And I just think that's fascinating.
I want to go to there. So I think we're talking about fairy tales this week, right? I'm just having trouble. I just want to pull on that thread because I'm not sure what our topic is yet. And it's been almost the whole show.
We brought Frank in to talk about about
giant walls,
stone structures in the
Talk
Americas.
about giant walls, but I was just curious. When I meet somebody who has a big interest in something that I don't have an inherent interest in, I always get curious, like, why is that? But to
I
me,
didn't realize you were asking the deep part of the question.
to me, it's more, to my mind, it's the thing that's interesting to me. Like fairies are interesting to you, is why you would be into it. With me, and like I'm very much into megalithic structures and ancient civilizations.
Mhm.
I'm not sure why. I think we can learn a lot from history that can help us with stuff today. As cliche as
Mhm.
that sounds, I don't think anybody spends enough time studying history. So
I am crazy about history. Sorry, I will interrupt super quick. I'm crazy about history, and fairy tales is how I got to be crazy about history. Because fairy tales, the more you study them and the farther back you go, the more you start to realize that just like the Bible and any other holy scripture of some religion, it's really just a story about the symbolism of the cultural anthropology of that people. Like what symbols were important to them, what historical events were important to them, and how did they retell those in a way that the people, the common people who weren't involved in it at all, how they could understand it and apply it doctrinally or historically or life lessonly. And like the cultural anthropology aspect of fairy tales, myths, and legends is what led me to be crazy about history and ancient history specifically. Okay, I'm done.
Well, I think you had said, Kate, something about like asking each other what our favorite fairy tales are. And I think my favorite fairy tale is Mom, cover your ears. Adam and Eve.
Oh, come
Because
on.
it's just an origin story. I love fairy tales that explain origins and
Yeah.
fans.
Oh, Becca,
Well,
Yeah.
that's cool. I like this.
we're gonna have a chat about Adam and Eve one day because there is so much symbolism in that.
Yeah,
So much.
exactly. Come
So
on.
much.
The poison apple. What an archetype.
Oh,
It's in
yeah, from the very
everything.
basic level, the poison apple, but like everything about it. Like
Yeah.
You don't
I'm
have to,
gonna
you
fight.
don't have to apologize anything there. That's, I mean, even Chris, like
It's a myth.
there's a special place reserved in the place for stupid people for people who actually believe that story in the Bible is true. Like,
I admit it never occurred to me to wonder how much of it was symbolism until I was taking scripture classes from an archaeologist in college, and he was like, serpent is gematria for Messiah. It just means some dude that was a leader spoke to them. That's all it means. It wasn't a talking snake. And I'm like, oh, and then like
an apple
all
doesn't
the
mean
symbolism
apple.
of the rest of it. I was like, oh, it's a story about doctrine. Got it.
The word that we say apple, we refer to an object as apple. The Aramaic just basically had more of a definition that meant red. There's a field of like Terence McKenna followers that believe it was the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the red mushroom, right? Because
yeah.
you eat the psychedelic mushroom, you gain the
Knowledge,
divine knowledge.
enlightenment.
Like literally in our modern times, they've outlawed. They'd say you can have the cigarettes and the sugar and the fat and the salt and the booze,
Stuff we
but
can
don't touch the red little mushroom over there because then you'll understand that the war is wrong and that the government's corrupt and buying.
Here, take these breads and circuses.
Yeah, go work and work and work and then buy the bread and circuses. But don't
have this yeasty beer beverage. It'll make you forget everything and then work on the pyramids some more.
Right, take your caffeine, go to work, shop, and then chill out with some beer, and then go.
Here, take your Starbucks and go back to the corporation.
Right. So, but Becca,
and then COVID came along. Right. I just, I like disruptors like that force that, like, even the most comfortable civilization is now outside of its comfort zone. Everybody's losing their freaking minds. Sorry, that's all I was going to say.
Awful, but I think it's also helped change the world in ways the world needed to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you go to the grocery store and they don't have the brand of the item that you want, but they have 3 other brands that you can choose from, and it costs more than you wanted it to. And that means the world is ending. Have you ever been to a third world country and tried to go into one of their grocery stores?
Right.
Welcome to the club. And you're not even close yet.
There's a big difference between not being able to afford everything you need and not being able to afford everything you want. Right.
Right, exactly. Or being able to afford it, but it's not available to you the second that you want it. Like your supply chain is having problems and you're losing your mind over it, and let's go Brandon and all that jazz. Right. But that's a real Debbie Downer. Speaking of Debbie Downer, I got a message from our previous guest, Manny, and he had just realized that our mother's name is like Debbie Downer's chiller cousin, Debbie Mello.
That's funny.
So I'm like in the very end of Stephen King's The Dome, and I really want to get back to it. And I know that's selfish, but Frank, you want to bring it home with these stone walls that you saw in Peru, or was it Costa Rica?
I saw a little bit in each of the places, but the stuff in Peru was interesting. There's 3 different types of stone structures that you find throughout Peru. There's and they're always in certain levels. Beck, I think you've already heard some of this, so I'll go quick with it. But basically, there's the ones that everybody looks at, which are the big ones that like are most close to like Stonehenge. The rocks are about the size of Stonehenge, and they're fitted. They're what's called dry construction, right? So there's no kind of cement or anything that's being used, and they're huge. And then on top of that, there's similar architecture, dry stonework, and similar shapes and stuff, but they're all smaller. Much more manageable. Mm-hmm. Like you look at these rocks and you're not like, how did they move those around? But there's a third that's underneath of it that nobody seems to ever pay attention to, which is megalithic structures that are built through a subtractive method. So you go up to a big cliff or a rock wall or something, and you see that they've carved out. and they've carved it out in just as much of a geometric method. So it's like not all sloppy. It's a straight wall down and a straight wall out, almost like they built a seat. And they're different sizes in different places. It almost looks like that. You could see, oh, maybe that was the place where a guy sat, or maybe that's where they made a sacrifice. But sometimes they go up the walls, and maybe they put different things up there for ceremonies. I don't know, but it's weird because all of these are claimed to be Incan construction, but the Incan civilization isn't really that old. They arose in the 100 years before Columbus got to America.
Yeah.
And there's almost like stones are built on top of stones. So there's ancient building that goes way back. And yeah, there does seem to be building that lines up with, I heard you talk about thin spaces and ley lines and that kind of stuff. There's theories about that. The ones that, Kate, you saw the picture of, that's a place that has a funny name. It's Sacsayhuaman, which sounds very close to sexy woman. Everybody always kind of jokes about that, but it's up in the hills from Cusco, and the consensus is it's a fort. But there's a lot of reasons why that might not necessarily make sense in terms of how it's built. Like, it's built with its wall facing the side that you wouldn't need the wall to be on. It already has a natural wall because it's up on the top of the valley. And then again, most importantly, there's an area that most people don't go to the east of it that is not the big wall. It's subtractive construction that's built into rocks that are in the ground, like a rock comes up out of the ground. Crystal actually chipped off a piece of rock from one of those while we were there and took it home because she figured her family's from there. She's allowed to do that, you know.
Sure.
It's her.
I think those rocks might be in my basement still, even though she and I have talked 100 times about getting them back to her.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was thinking about that this week. She definitely needs to get those because I was watching footage of that. So I don't know. When it comes to the supernatural stuff, for some reason my mind always just goes like science. Like, well, there's got to be a perfectly good explanation for this, which is why I made the Scully and Mulder reference in the text because, you know, and I used to be 100% closed down to supernatural, all science. In my adult life, that shifted. I'm very much open. Like, I know there's more out there than what science tells me. I know there's more out there than what I might want to believe in. You know, but it doesn't all line up as well in my head for me. There's a lot of problems there. I mean,
I really think supernatural is just science that we aren't smart enough to understand yet. I think that, you know, before
not there yet.
You know, before when there was only one person saying the world is round, they were like, that's some supernatural woo-woo shit, you know, and like, no, it was just science. And that was the first person who had discovered it. Right. And, you know, I just think we think like we know everything there is to know, but not even a little bit, you know. So things you don't understand get termed supernatural, and you know. So basically, if supernatural is just science that we don't understand yet, I would say fairy tales were, you know, a way of trying to understand something. Yeah, just trying to understand something that they didn't truly understand yet. And my favorite fairy tale will always be, and it's a very lame one, but you know, it's my favorite because she was a bookworm, Beauty and the Beast.
Aww.
So
how about you, Frank?
So
oh no, I already said Adam and Eve. I can't take two. I can't take two.
You can have one from literature and one
from history. Yeah, right. Adam and Eve, Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
All right. How about you, Frank? What's your favorite one?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I'm curious what Beauty and the Beast might be an allegory for, what it might be trying to explain.
I could tell you.
The transformation, the transformation tale. It's always like, you know,
redemption and that kind of stuff.
Don't judge a book by its cover, and you know, love changes the way you look at people, and
that's a lovely modern interpretation of the modern
Kate, don't you dare ruin it for me. Don't you dare.
I won't.
You dare. Shut your mouth.
I won't. I will not.
Shut your mouth.
The older versions.
Hey, you believe there was really like a big hairy mean guy with claws that lived up in a castle somewhere one time, and like a woman fell in love with him or something, or got captured.
Oh, honey, that's the Disney version.
Well, but you're saying don't go to Ireland on that tour because fairies aren't just a way of explaining things. Sometimes they're also real, right?
I think sometimes they are real. okay, Beauty and the Beast doesn't involve fairies, so, but it is a fairy tale. There is some historical context for a big hairy dude, though. 1600s, but
Okay.
I don't think that's necessarily what Beauty and the Beast is based on. I think Beauty and the Beast has like fairy abduction origins, but I won't get into it because I don't want to ruin it for you.
All right. Well, what's
But
your
that's
favorite fairy tale, Kate?
Oh, I think one of my favorite like historical origin stories is the one. I should have looked this up ahead of time. There's this Aboriginal myth, and I don't. It actually is an Aboriginal origin myth that circulates among like all the tribes of Australia. So I'm not just like, I don't know the name of the tribe. It's just Aborigines, but it is. So the the creator god is the rainbow serpent, who has this name that's like 15 syllables name long and has like Jason K's in it. But so I'm sorry, I can't say it. I'd have to study it. But the rainbow serpent, which is what he's known by white people as, he opened his mouth and out came the sound of creation. And the sound of creation was the sound made by the instrument, the didgeridoo. And I think that is just the coolest thing ever.
That's very cool.
That is very cool.
And also, I just think it's cool that there are flying serpents in a lot of other like ancient myths and legends that are all over the world. So I think that's just a really cool thing, like Quetzalcoatl and like all this other stuff. There are lots of myths and legends where creation became, because I think there's a Norse legend about that as well, that like it was spoken and so it became.
The Egyptian.
But that's whenever it's European, it's a little tricky, because if it's European, it was probably a little bit mangled by Christian monks who were retelling it,
Right,
with a Christian vein to it. So that gets a little tricky. But yeah, that's one of my favorite myths, one of my favorite fairy tales. That's so hard. So it would probably be a toss-up between East of the Sun, West of the Moon, or one of the stories of Baba Yaga.
I've heard of Baba Yaga, but I'm not familiar with it.
Baba Yaga is a Russian fairy tale witch who actually has her origins as a Russian god, a pre-Christian Russian goddess, which I only discovered that part a couple years ago. But I think I discovered the Baba Yaga stories when I was probably 10 or 12. And she's this amazing witch that lives in the Russian woods, and she's a cannibal. And she lives in this hut that's on chicken legs, and it'll dance around and around and around until you say the magic words. And it has like a fence made of bones, and all the skulls on top of the fence will light up at night. And like the protagonist usually like wanders into the woods because they've been kicked out of their house by their stepsisters, or they're seeking something to save somebody or whatever, and they end up in the woods, and there's the Baba Yaga, and the Baba Yaga's like, I could eat you, or I could help you. What shall I do? And she usually presents some sort of really impossible task. And like, if they don't get it done, she'll eat you. And if you do get it done, maybe she'll give you something magical and help you out. Maybe not. Maybe she'll eat you anyway. I don't know. So I just
sounds like the hero should be Portuguese and just bring her food, because Portuguese women just feed. So it could be the Baba Yaga and the Vavoa. Yeah. And the Vavoa just shows up with food.
Yeah,
such a fantastic character. I like the gifts she gives are like deadly. Like she gave this Cinderella type character a skull because she'd asked for a light because all the fires were out in her house because her stupid stepsisters and stepmother took them all out. And they're like, go into the woods and get eaten by Baba Yaga. I mean, find a light, you know? And so like Baba Yaga's like, here, take this skull back. And like, but don't look it in the eyes. And she's like, okay. So she takes it back and she's like, look, I found fire, shows them the skull, and like her stepsisters and stepmother turned to ash.
Nice.
That's
a much better Cinderella. All right, Frank, last chance. What's your favorite fairy tale?
I don't know. I'll get back to you.
Or
all right. Well, when you send us the picture of the walls for Kate to post on Instagram, Send her your favorite fairy tale too.
You know,
And
the Egyptian creation myth is that creation was ejaculated, not spoken, but ejaculated.
oh
Wow,
yeah.
right? So that I think that's rather bold and
That makes
original. So I
sense.
like that one.
Okay. Okay, I'll allow it.
Makes
Since I
more sense. Life comes from
I
there
mean,
more than it comes from
the
here, right?
Egyptians were really into ejaculation. Like you would, like for fertility rites, the pharaoh would have to go ejaculate into a field in front of a whole bunch of people. So like, it vibes.
yeah, that works.
That works.
All right.
Feed
Well,
the field.
hopefully, hopefully by next week we'll have gotten our shit together.